Asher abete perro begerto. Yeta perro begelo que comin. Bakarnish beaderto. Yish beabegelo que comin.
Shalom, shalom, family. As Moray Alright here, and today we are going to talk about the Shepherd's Mark and how it pertains to the Exodus and what is going on over here in the lands of our captivity. Okay, and how Yah is separating the people and placing the mark on those that are His, and how only those who have the mark will we get into the land of Israel, and the rest will be stopped at the borders. And we want to talk about that and show that to you guys today. So what does the grammar and syntax shows? The grammar and syntax shows that out of the nations first, into the containment zone, checked at the border, and only the ones marked righteous enter the land. This is what the grammar shows, okay? So we're going to sit here and look. We have Me'aretz megarichem otzi otam. From the land of their sojourning, I will bring them out. The verb is a chipil causative imperfect. Most High initiates the physical removal of everyone, both rebels and righteous, from the diaspora. So both the rebels and the righteous are going to come out. Everybody's coming out. They're going to go into the containment zone, and those with the mark will be allowed to come in. Everybody's going to pass up under the rod one by one. As long as you have this shepherd's mark, then you will be able to get into the land. Va'el adamat Yisrael lo yavo. But into the soil of Israel, he, meaning the rebel, shall not enter. The preposition el means into or across the boundary of. The text sets up a hard boundary or a hard barrier. Okay? There's a hard barrier and a hard boundary. Okay? So, all those people talking about, I'm going to wait till I get to the wilderness, this and that, and then once I get to the wilderness, then I'll be able to cut it on like a light switch. Well, bad news for you. The wilderness is now, the wilderness of the people. Because they are brought out of the nations, but forbidden from entering into the land. The syntax forces the purging, uvaroti, to take place in the containment zone, the wilderness of the peoples. That's what we in right now, right? Medebar ha'amim, right? Medebar ha'amim, ha'amim, Medebar ha'amim. Right, and you see you have that Agna right there because he wants you to pause and think about it, because you're the wilderness of the peoples, not just the wilderness of sin, the wilderness of wilderness of sin, the wilderness of Paran. No, the wilderness of the Amim, the peoples, the nations. The wilderness acts as a literal containment zone or sorting sieve. So you look around and you see all the bad things that's happening in Israel right now. It's because we're in the containment zone. You're being sorted, you're being sieved, and he's placing an X and a mark on those that are his, and they're seeking him and him alone in righteousness, in truth and knowledge. A grammatical clue is in the Hebrew text. A sudden shift in pronominal suffixes, the pronouns attached to verbs and nouns. In verse 33 through 37, Elohim addresses the house of Israel using the plural second person. I will rule over you. Alexim. 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 I will look at you face to face. Iktim. Ikkim. Ikkim. They are handled as a collective national group. But in the middle of verse 38, the grammar suddenly shifts to the singular third person when discussing the rebels. I will bring them, plural, out of the country where they sojourn, but into the land of Israel, he, singular, Yavo, shall not enter. Yavo shall not enter. So he's going to bring the rebels out, and that's, out of the lands, but you ain't enter into the land of Israel, because you got to be practicing and keeping Torah and striving for truth and knowledge and striving to do the things that the Most High told you to do here in the lands of your captivity. A grammatical clue is in the Hebrew text. Again, we still on that. The grammatical shift beautifully mirrors the shepherd metaphor from verse 37, passing under the rod. The collective group is brought out of the nations together, but in the wilderness, the syntax fractures into the singular. Elohim inspects them one by one. Each individual rebel is identified, marked as a rebel, and blocked at the border. Vanispati, and its absolute permanence. The verb vanispati, I will enter into judgment, is in the perfect tense with the vav consecutive, indicating a definitive future consequential action. In classical Hebrew syntax, when Elohim says vanispati panim el panim, it denotes its finality. It is not an ongoing cyclical discipline like the judges or kings of old. It is a decisive terminal court case. So, vanispati panim el panim, it's final. It's final. That's why he said panim el panim. Final. Ain't no going back, ain't no pleading your case, ain't no none of that. Now, what is the shepherd's mark? Ezekiel 20 doesn't use the English word mark like the Hebrew syntax in ancient cultural context of the verse mean exactly that. And I will cause you to pass under the rod, and I will bring you into the bond of the covenant. The phrase tachat hashavet, under the rod, is a technical legal term drawn from pastoral law, specifically Leviticus 27 and 32. Right? The phrase tachat hashavet, again, is a technical legal term drawn from pastoral law, specifically Leviticus 27 and 32. So what does Leviticus 27 and 32 say? And concerning the tithe of the herd or of the flock, even of whatsoever passeth under the rod, the 10th shall be holy unto Adonai. Right? That is the law. That is the law. And concerning the tithe of the herd and or of the flock, even of whatsoever passeth under the rod, the 10th shall be holy unto Adonai. When an Israelite counted their flock to separate the tithe for Elohim, the sheep passed under the staff one by one. As the 10th animal passed, the shepherd didn't just count it, he marked it with a dip of colored dye, usually red ochre, and on its wool to physically identify it as set apart from the rest. That's the same thing the Most High is doing while we were over in the nations, in the wilderness of the peoples. He's marking those on the forehead with a mark to identify his from the rest of y'all. No matter what everybody, no matter what nobody is saying, you know, and it's easy to tell. Like he tells you, Malachi 3 and 18, once you come back to me and me alone, and you come to me in truth and knowledge, and you really humble yourself, you'll be able to tell who serveth me and who serveth me not. So here we have the shepherd's mark, right? Yeah, that's the wool. The shepherd would take his staff. Each shepherd would pass up under the staff, and the 10th one he would mark him as set apart to Adonai. Okay. By using this exact phrasing in Ezekiel 20, the Most High is showing that while the exiles are out in the midbar, the wilderness of the nations, he is executing an individual inspection. The rod is the tool used to halt each person, inspect their spiritual condition, and effectively mark them as either a covenant keeper or a rebel, a ha-moradim, before the border crossing. Ezekiel 9 and 4. And the Lord said unto him, Go through the midst of the city, and set a mark upon the foreheads of the men that sigh and that cry for all the abominations. The Hebrew text says to ascribe a tav on the foreheads of all those that sigh and cry for the abominations. In the ancient Paleo-Hebrew script used during Ezekiel's time, as seen in artifacts like the Lachish letters, the letter Tav was simply written as an X or a cross-like mark. In the ancient Paleo-Hebrew script used during Ezekiel's time, like I said, it was used as an X or a cross-like mark. And you see this right here in the Lachish, in the stele of the Hezekiah's tunnel stele. And you shall subscribe a tav upon the foreheads of the men. Vehitvata tav al mischot ha anoshim. And you shall subscribe a tav upon the foreheads of the men. And you see here, you see the tav right here. Right here, you see the tav right here in the Siloam Tunnel inscription. And here it is bigger. You see the tav right here, the X, tav, is the tav. So when Ezekiel transitions in chapter 20 to the imagery of the end times returning in the wilderness, where Elohim causes the exiles to pass under the shepherd's rod, Tachat HaShavet, he is drawing directly on this visual mechanism. The shepherd's dipped staff, right? The action and the result. And in ancient pastoral practice, the shepherd dipped the end of his staff into a dark red ochre clay or dye. As each sheep passed under the rod to be vetted, the shepherd struck or touched its coat, leaving a visible distinct X or tav on the animal's wool. That simple tav mark physically identified that specific animal as inspected, counted, and legally certified as belonging to the owner's personal possession. And it's the same thing that the Most High is doing over here in the Midbar, Amim, in the wilderness of the peoples. The syntax and epigraphy of the Tanakh prove that when Elohim talks about marking or sorting people out in the nations, he isn't using a vague spiritual metaphor. He is utilizing the highly visible, concrete imagery of scribing a sharp, unmistakable Paleo-Hebrew tav on the individuals who pass his inspection, separating them permanently from the rebels before they ever reach the border of Israel. Now here is the ultimate proof. Chen tavi shaddai, ya anini ve'safer katav ish ravi. Behold my tav, my mark, my signature. Let the Almighty answer me, and let my adversary write a book scroll of indictment. This comes from Job. The syntax and epigraphy of this Tanakh prove that when God talks about marking or sorting people out in the nations, he isn't using a very spiritual metaphor, which I'm repeating myself and I'm saying it again. He is utilizing a highly visible, concrete imagery of subscribing a sharp, unmistakable Paleo-Hebrew tav. And you see this right here in the book of Job. When Job tells his friends, when he's giving his message back, he says, Chen tavi shaddai, ya anini vasafer katav ish ravi. Behold my tav, behold my mark, behold my signature. Let the Almighty answer me, and let my adversary write a book scroll of indictment. Tavi is the noun tav with the first person singular pronominal suffix I, which means my. It literally translates to my mark or my sign. Because an ancient tav was written as a cross or an X, was the exact mark illiterate or legally binding individuals used to sign official documents at the city gates. This is why modern translations like the ESV, the NASB, and the new KJV translate Chen tavi directly as here is my signature. And it's also why even during the modern times, you say sign your X. You know what I'm saying? They would sign with an X. The slaves would sign with an X or etc. You know what I'm saying? That's where they get this from. Job is saying, I sign my X to my defense. I declare the Almighty to sign his document in court. This proves philologically that a tav is a physical identifying mark scribed by an author to claim ownership or responsibility. Sound familiar? Now, the textual proof of the X shape in Torah grammar. David scratching marks on the gate in 1 Samuel 21:13. When King David is running from Saul and fakes insanity before King Achish of Gath, the text describes his frantic physical actions using this exact verbal root. And he feigned, Viyatab al datot ha himself mad in their hands, and he subscribed marks, scrawled signs upon the doors of the gate. In the causative PL form of the root tovah, David is literally scratching erratic intersecting lines. A X marks the spot onto wooden city gate to make himself look completely unhinged to the guards. The structural inverse, Cain's protection mark in Genesis 4:15. While the word uses ot, sign or mark, rather than tav, the mechanical concept matches Ezekiel perfectly. When Cain is driven out into the wilderness as a wanderer, he fears that anyone who finds him out in the nations will kill him. The Lord set a mark upon Cain, lest any finding him should smite him. Just like the tav in Ezekiel 9 and the shepherd's tav mark in Ezekiel 20, Elohim places a physical identifier on a man while he is out in exile to dictate his destiny to anyone who encounters him. The grammar of the Tanakh leaves no room for doubt. Job 31:35 proves a tav is a personal, legally binding signature or claim mark. 1 Samuel 21:13 proves the verbal form means to physically scratch or scribe cross marks on surfaces. Ezekiel 9:4 puts it together, proving that Elohim's method of separating people is to physically scribe his personal signature, the tav, on the bodies of those he claims his own, verifying that the sorting in the wilderness is an absolute, individualized branding process. Now, the shepherd's mark, Amos 9:9. For lo, I will command, and I will sift the house of Israel among all nations, like as corn is sifted in the sieve, yet shall not the least of grain fall upon the earth. All of the sinners of my people shall die by the sword. The sifting and marking process occurs b'kol hagoyim, among the Gentiles. The sieve catches the debris and holds back the dross while they are still scattered, ensuring that when the final move to the land happens, the sinners and rebels have already been identified, marked, and barred from entry. This is the checkpoint verse, showing the mechanics of the shepherd's rod at the border block. Vaha avati achem chachat hashavet. Vachavati achem ba mazaret habarit. Uvaroti machim ha moredim. Vaha poshaim bi ma'aretz magaruchem otzi otam. Va'el adamat Israel lo yavo. You will not enter. Yisrael lo yavo. You will not enter. Now, the vetting. Vaha avati echem tachat hashavet. The verb vaha avati is a hif-hil causative perfect verb with a flipped vav, meaning I will actively cause you to cross over or pass. Elohim is going to be forcing this action. So it ain't no I'm not going to go, I'm not going this and that, I'm away. Elohim going to force you to go. The preposition tachat means underneath. The noun hashavet means the rod or staff. This mimics Leviticus 27:32. The shepherd drops his physical staff lower over the gate. The sheep cannot rush through as a crowd. They are forced to bend down and squeeze through one by one. This breaks the national collective down to individual inspection. While under the rod, the shepherd uses his red clay to mark Tav, the owner's chosen sheep. And that's why Moses tells you choose life that you may live, And that's why in today's Torah Parsha and Shabbat on July the 18th, it was talking about walking the straight and narrow, not turning to the left or to the right. Okay, because this is not a game. A lot of y'all play around with this like it's Christianity. It is not. It is not a game. The extraction at the border and the block. Me'aretz mugarechem osi va'el adamat. Yisrael lo yavo. The directional preposition out, me'aretz, uses the mem prefix, meaning out of, away from, the land of the temporary exile, megaruchem. The directional preposition in, ve'el adamat, ve'el admat, means the preposition el, which means into, unto, across the border of, the soil of Israel. The absolute negative, lo yavo, is the third person masculine singular imperfect. He, the individual rebel, shall absolutely not enter. Lo yavo. So the syntax creates a geographical trap. Elohim draws everyone out of the Gentile lands, but drops a legal barrier before the border of Israel. The purging, uvaroti, scrubbing, cleaning, or filtering, physically occurs in the intermediate zone, the midbar, wilderness, trapping the rebels outside. Now, let's look at Ezekiel 9 and 4. Wayamer Yahweh elav avor bekor ha'er v'chetvitatav al mechot ha'anashim ha'enachim v'chanaanakim. Right? So the text says v'chitvati. I'm sorry. Let me drink me some water. Hold on. Vachitvatatav. Vachitvatah is a hit-filled causative perfect second person singular with the flipped vav. Again, meaning you shall cause a mark to be made, or you shall scribe. It is a direct command to the angelic writer. The object is the tav, is the literal name of the final letter of the Paleo-Hebrew alphabet. Again, in Ezekiel's day, the letter tav was written as an X or a cross mark. The verb literally commands the scribe to draw an intersecting cross mark. It is not an abstract thought. It is a physical visual seal from the angelic writer. Now, the placement of the seal, al-mizhok, right? Al-mizhok ha-anoshim. The text says al-mizhok ha-anoshim. The preposition al means upon or directly on top of. Mizchot is the anatomy. It is the plural construct noun for foreheads. The forehead is the most visible, unavoidable, anatomical location on the human body. By stamping the Paleo-Hebrew directly on the bone structure of the forehead, the righteous are physically branded as Elohim's private property. When the sorting forces go through, the mark instantly communicates immunity. Immunity. So, let's look at the summary. We have verse right here. We have the grammatical action, the instrument or metaphor, the spatial location, and the target object. Amos 9 and 9. Shaking and shifting, vahanoti. We have the sieve, kavara. And the spatial location, inside the nations, b'chol hagoyim. The targeted object, trapping the stones of river, the zeorah. Ezekiel 20 and 37. The grammatical action, causing to pass, vaha-avati. The instrument or metaphor, the shepherd's rod, tachat ha-shavet. The spatial location, the midbar, amin. The wilderness of the people. The target object, individualizing the flock for sorting. Ezekiel 9 and 4. The grammatical action, scribing or branding, vahitvatah. The instrument or metaphor, the Paleo-Hebrew cross, tav. Spatial location, upon the foreheads, the al-mizchot. the target location, sealing the remnant as legal property. Okay? So, that will be the end of this lecture of the Shepherd's Mark and the Tav. I hope I was able to edify you, and I hope I was able to bring understanding to you, brothers and sisters, that the Most High is not playing games. It's either obey or die, walk the straight or narrow, or die, or, and do the things that he said do, okay? If you go to Isaiah chapter 1 and you read chapter 1, he lays out 9 different things that you can do to get this tithe mark, okay? Isaiah chapter 1, I think it's verses 16 and 17 and 18. 9 things that you can do to get this tithe mark, to where you can get that immunity, so where you won't go, you will be able to pass under the rod, okay? Pass under the rod. So again, I'm being shadow banned by YouTube, so please share the message, hit the bell notification, hit the likes, and if you're new to this channel, hit the subscribe button if I was able to teach you something, able to edify you. All right, leave a comment below and let me know what you think. Until the next video, shalom, shalom, lihitero, peace and blessings, and may the Most High increase your family in good health and knowledge and wisdom and a sound mind. Baruch Hashem.
Bakanish beaderto, yish beabega loke kumin. Genesh hacho katarota arushanoto.